Hello, I'm Will. Welcome to X Investigation. 5 Finnish diving enthusiasts. They set out to explore an underwater cave for a diving expedition. Soon, inside the cave, they faced an unexpected crisis. It happened in Norway. The Pulla Cave diving incident. The story unfolds in northern Norway. Norway sits on the western side of the Scandinavian peninsula, bordering Sweden to the east and the Atlantic Ocean to the west. In southern central Norway, in Rana, lies the Pulla River. The river runs above and below ground. Its underground stretch runs 3.8 kilometers, the longest underground river in Norway. It has carved numerous limestone caves. One of them is Pulla Cave. Nestled beneath the Scandinavian mountains, the cave stretches about 3,000 m, the longest underwater natural cave in the Nordics. In 1980, the first diver entered Pulla Cave. It soon attracted divers from Norway and Finland. The cave's entrance isn't on land. It's at the lake bottom. After entering, they descend another 34 m, reaching a chamber called the air chamber. The chamber spans 250 m. It isn't fully flooded. Divers can surface here for a brief rest, then continue deeper. Eventually they reach the cave's deepest point, 135 m below the surface. On the way down, divers must watch for slate. The slate is razor sharp. A slip can tear a dive suit. Water temps hover near 0 Celsius. If a suit cracks, it becomes a deadly risk. At the deepest point, divers must do a decompression ascent, which takes about 2 hours. After surfacing, they still have to climb a roughly 100 m vertical shaft. Then you can reach the surface. The water in Pulla Cave is ice cold. A long stretch of the cave lies within, all below 100 m underground. The deepest part is over 130 m from the surface, so Pulla Cave became famous and extremely difficult. September 2013, a Finnish dive team arrived here and discovered a link between the two entrances. Among those divers, 2 standout veterans, one named Kai, the other Patrick. Both were diving fanatics. They once dove 210 md for 8 hours, setting an unofficial Finnish depth record. Months later, Kai and Patrick gathered more people and headed back to Pulla Cave to investigate. They invited a 40-year-old production manager, Gary Hoto-Lingning, whom we'll call Big Gary. Also a 34-year-old mechanical engineer, Gary Ushimaki, whom we'll call Little Gary. And a 33-year-old electrical designer, Vesa. The 5 diving enthusiasts met to explore Norway's Pulla Cave and start a new adventure. They prepared thoroughly, planning to film the entire dive, with cameras rolling. Everyone was eager for the cave dive. They never imagined danger was already creeping in. Could they escape the cave alive? Now we rewind to February 6, 2014. February 6, 2014. It was a Thursday. Norwegian winter in February. Highways coated in ice. Surrounded by a white, snowy landscape. 5 Finnish dive fans endured a 15-hour drive. The drive, arriving near Pulla Cave at the foot of the Navia Mountains. It was already 1 a.m. The group squeezed into a pickup truck packed with all kinds of diving gear. It includes a motor snow bridge, an underwater scooter, and oxygen tanks, among other things. The 5 got out of the vehicle. They arrived at the Jadbrua farm next to the Pulla Cave. After 15 hours of round-trip travel, they were exhausted, so they'd spend the night here and re-enter the cave at dawn. Winter nights feel longer than usual. It's now 9 a.m. Daylight has broken. Outside temperature, -3 degrees Celsius. Ice coats everything outside. The weather is bitterly cold. After breakfast, some of them began planning today's dive. They think, if all 5 enter the cave together, because there are too many people, they could stir up the sediment inside, making the clear water turn murky, reducing visibility. That would add many uncertainties and make the approach far harder. The 5 decided to split into 2 teams. Team 1, Patrick and Big Yari, who will go in first. After 2 hours, once the disturbed sediment settles, Team 2, Kai, Visa, and Little Yari will then enter. After the plan is set, they move out. Patrick and Big Yari's team reaches the lake surface. The cave entrance lies at the lake bottom. Because of the cold, A thick ice sheet covers the lake. To dive down, they must first break through the ice. Patrick and Big Yari grab a chainsaw and start cutting the ice. They need to cut a hole big enough for one person. Meanwhile, Kai, Visa, and Little Yari's second team heads to the opposite exit to bring supplies to that point. When they surface, they'll be at that spot. They can swap out wetsuits there, grab some food for energy, then climb back up the tree hollow, then climb up the tree hollow. When all the work was done, everyone gathered at the lake. It was already noon, 12 p.m. Team 1, Patrick and Big Gary, had their diving gear on, ready to plunge underwater. Team 2, Kai, Visa, and Little Gary, waited on the shore, planning to enter in 2 hours. Patrick took a portable camera and dove first. Big Gary followed right behind him. Cave diving is extremely risky. Every 10 m down adds another atmosphere of pressure, and the stress builds quickly. In that high-pressure environment, any small instability can turn deadly. So below 40 m, divers must be specially trained. Patrick and Gary used top-tier equipment, including an underwater scooter, a propulsion device that lets them glide fast, helping them move quickly. They also carried an underwater rebreather, which recirculates exhaled CO2, mixes it with fresh oxygen, and feeds it back to the diver. Thus the diver's breath never leaves the system, and the gas stays pure, ensuring the diver always inhales a mix of oxygen, nitrogen, and helium. The advantage is fewer tanks to lug, ideal for tight underwater passages. The rebreather is usually controlled by a dive computer, mounted on the diver's arm. The diver reads the data on it to plan his dive time precisely. Patrick and Gary were ultra cautious, knowing the PRA cave is treacherous, so they carried not only a closed-circuit rebreather, but also an open-circuit backup tank. It added weight, but if the rebreather failed, they'd have a spare. Patrick and Gary, after a while descending, they finally reached the chamber 34 meters below ground, took a brief rest, then pressed deeper into the cave. The cave was pitch black, hardly any light at all. The two could only rely on their own dive lights to see. But that wasn't all. The water was ice cold. And after a long time in that environment, people feel miserable. After swimming a distance, they finally arrived at the deepest part of the PRA cave. It sits 135 meters below the surface, and the passage is extremely narrow. Patrick and Djali packed away their underwater scooters, planning to slip through the bend. Veteran Patrick led the way, with Djali close behind. Patrick was the first to clear the deepest turn. Then he turned to look at Djali. At that moment, Patrick saw Djali's dive light bobbing up and down, a signal that sent a chill through Patrick, because it meant a diver in trouble. Patrick rushed to Djali's side, and on closer look, Djali's underwater scooter was jammed by a huge rock. To free it, Patrick pulled with all his might, yanking the scooter from the stone. He exhaled, thinking the danger was over. But then, Patrick realized Djali was also stuck, unable to break free. Worse still, Djali was panicking badly, and faintly seemed to hear a voice saying, "Open the way, drop the mask." Patrick instantly sensed Djali's breathing was compromised. It should be noted that when divers use a B6 regulator, panic or fear can trigger. When divers use the B6 respirator, if panic or fear sets in, will cause irregular breathing. Thus, the B6 rebreather can't absorb the diver's exhaled CO2, leading to hypercapnia. Hypercapnia can cause a rapid heartbeat, unstable blood pressure, unconsciousness, and death. During deep dives, the pressure on the diver far exceeds surface pressure. Any sudden physical issue can trigger irregular breathing. If they keep using the BIRA rebreather, then hypercapnia develops easily. To prevent this, when a diver notices unstable breathing, they switch from the BIRA rebreather to an open-circuit tank to lower CO2 levels in the blood. Patrick understood Didari's meaning. He immediately handed his open-circuit tank hose to Didari. After about 10 breaths, Didari switched back to his closed-circuit rebreather, but an unexpected scene unfolded. Patrick saw clearly. The regulator slipped from Didari's mouth. In the spring dive, besides hypercapnia, there's another danger: acute oxygen toxicity. Breathing too much oxygen quickly disrupts physiological functions. Acute oxygen toxicity often occurs silently. Divers may not notice anything, then suddenly lose consciousness. Their regulators fell from their mouths. They lost consciousness. Seeing this, Patrick began to panic himself. He hurriedly placed the dive regulator onto their mouths. But it did nothing. They lay motionless, no breath. On the surface, they might still survive. But now he is 111 m underground in an underwater cave. Patrick is powerless. He can't save them. Suddenly, Patrick also sees darkness. He grabs a nearby rock. The dive computer shows at this point his breathing quickened. If he doesn't calm down, he could be in danger too. So he stayed where he was, holding back the grief of losing his partner, trying to steady himself. Luckily, Patrick was experienced, a former cave diving rescue diver who'd seen many people sink to the bottom. He quickly composed himself. He didn't even know how long he'd been in that spot. Patrick glanced at his diving computer on his arm and was shocked again. The computer displayed, based on his dive time and physiological state, that a safe decompression ascent would take 400 minutes. He had planned a normal ascent to take only 120 minutes. About decompression, we covered it earlier in the Florida cave diving episode, so here's a quick recap. Every 10 meters down adds another atmosphere of pressure. Thus divers endure huge pressure at the bottom. If you ascend too fast, the surrounding pressure drops rapidly and dissolved gases can't be expelled in time. Bubbles form in tissue and blood, causing decompression sickness. The illness brings severe joint pain, blurred vision, chest tightness, and can lead to shock or death. So after long or deep dives, the ascent must include decompression stops matching the pressure endured. The deeper and longer you stay, the longer the required stops. Patrick realized he couldn't stay any longer. Each extra minute raised the risk. He couldn't bring the bodies out, so he had to ascend alone toward the exit. They can only ascend alone toward the exit. It's 2 p.m. The second team waits on the shore. Kai, Vesa, and Little Yari. They have no idea what's happening in the cave. When the time comes, they jump into the lake as planned and begin their dive. Veteran Vesa leads the way into the cavern, followed closely by Little Yari, with Kai at the rear. In 20 minutes they reach the air pocket, rest briefly, then push deeper. At 125 m underground, Vasa's footline gets tangled. Every extra 5 minutes underwater adds an hour of decompression time, but all three are seasoned divers, so they stay calm. Little Yari sees the problem and quickly helps Vesa free the line. The trio continues onward, navigating the deepest turn. Ahead, Vesa spots a figure, motionless, blocking the passage. Little Yari also sees the person, recognizes him as Big Yari. Mouth open, no words, water streaming over his body. Yari is terrified. His heart races. Breathing quickens. Kai, at the back, thinks he hears Yari calling something, but the sound is muffled by the water far away. He can't make out the words, but sees Yari switch from his main regulator to the backup. Kai realizes Yari is in trouble and rushes to talk to him, trying to keep him calm. Then, in minutes, Little Yari stops breathing. Kai watches Yari die before his eyes, sees Big Yari lifeless nearby, and Vesa, stunned and helpless. His blood seems to freeze. They also see a lifeless Yari nearby, and a bewildered Vesa. He feels his blood freeze in his veins. Suddenly at a loss, Kai sees Big Yari and Little Yari dead. Patrick from the first team looks doomed. Kai checks his spare tank. The extra oxygen supply is low. He decides to go back alone the way he came, leaving the lake surface. During the win or lose phase, Kai's first required decompression stop is at 100 meters underground. 100 meters. He watches the dive computer show. He still needs to stay here for an hour. He doesn't follow it. He thinks if he lingers too long underwater, he won't get decompression sickness, but he'll lose his life. When he reaches the chamber, some parts aren't flooded, so he can surface without fearing oxygen starvation, but his tank now holds little oxygen. If he wants to get back to the lake surface, he still has a final stretch to cover. Kai knows he can't wait blindly, so he decides to risk swimming back to the surface. Meanwhile, the other Patrick is still surfacing toward the opposite exit. Unable to contact the second team, he doesn't know if any companions are still alive. Patrick has been in the water far too long, far beyond his planned time. He's exhausted. The oxygen in his tank is almost gone, yet he keeps rising slowly toward the exit. The path ahead for the second team is blocked by massive debris. Visa won't just sit and die. She spends a long time, using her own strength, to pull the jammed Yari free from the tunnel. With oxygen running out, Visa can't worry about decompression sickness. She fights to surface. She knows how dangerous it is, but to survive she has no choice. Her wife and child are waiting at home. All she wants now is to reach the surface. When Visa gets within 6 meters of the surface, she looks up and sees a flash from a headlamp. The weight in Visa's heart finally lifts. This shows she wasn't fighting alone. When Vesa felt his arm and knee shooting with unbearable pain, a classic sign of caisson disease, but he didn't stop. He surged upward in one breath. It was now 9 p.m. Vesa and Patrick lay in the cave. They had survived the water. 1:30 a.m. Kai also broke the surface where he entered the lake. From the chamber to the surface took just 20 minutes, but his underwater scooter broke en route. He had to rely on his own strength and thin air to fight his way toward the surface. In the end, after 45 minutes, he surfaced. Kai was exhausted. He thought his teammates were trapped inside the cave. He trudged to the car and tried to drive away from the area to find rescue help. Suddenly he saw two people ahead. It was Patrick and Vesa. They staggered toward Kai. The three embraced. Tears filled their eyes. The next day, the local government summoned 3 British divers, Stanton, Warrington, and Marinson, all seasoned cave diving experts. The authorities wanted them to recover the bodies of the adults and children, but after analysis, they judged the cave too risky to enter now. The government decided to leave the bodies in the cave and closed the PRA cave, barring any outside entry. Yet the 3 survivors couldn't let it go. They wanted to bring the bodies out, to give their families some closure. March 26, a month after the incident, had passed. 17 Finnish divers gathered at PRA cave. Outside, they secretly entered the cave to retrieve bodies, defying the government. 10 of them dived into the cave, including Patrick and Kai, while 7 assistants helped on the surface. Vesa, severely injured by caisson disease, was declared by doctors unable to dive again for life. Even though his walk remained slow and unrecovered, he still resolutely joined the ground assist team. Divers entered the cave from 2 entrances, installing 26 spare tanks inside. Finally, they hauled Daijiali's and Xiaojiali's bodies out, with no one injured. Though the divers' action violated regulations of the government, after learning of it, offered no comment. 3 months after the incident, Daijiali and Xiaojiali were returned to their hometown in Finland. The diving ban on Pulla Cave was then lifted, allowing divers to return. Cave diving is a highly attractive pursuit, offering endless joy through exploring the unknown underground. It can bring endless joy, but it's also extremely risky. Even the most experienced can't guarantee safety. Perhaps that's the allure of cave diving. Perhaps that's the allure of cave diving.